Chapter 11, Aggregate Planning and Master Scheduling. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about faith. Psalms 15:1 talks about, Lord, who will abide in your tabernacle? Who may dwell in your holy hill? And then Psalms 15:4 says, he who swears to his own hurt and does not change. New Living Translation, keep their promises even when it hurts. NIV, who keeps an oath even when it hurts and does not change. Living Bible, keeps a promise even if it ruins him. And then if I look at Daniel 6:15, it talks about, know, O king, that the law of the Medes and Persians, that no decree or statute which the king establishes may be changed. So that's Daniel 6:15. And then in Esther 8:8, remember the story of Esther, it says, whatever is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's signet ring, no one can revoke. So something that's really important when you're talking about processes in a company and everything is that you follow the process even when no one is watching. That's to me, that's a definition of integrity, is you follow the rules even if no one will catch you doing it wrong. And the importance here in following the process, if there needs to be an exception to the process, the rules for the exception really should be written into the process so that it's very clear. What you don't want as a manager is, well, when I'm around, you don't have to follow the rules. But when I'm not here, you better follow the rules, because what will happen is when you're not around, they won't follow the rules because that's what the rule is. You don't have to follow the rules. And so I found that in process control, you have to follow the process in order to improve it. If you're not following the process, then it's squishy and you don't know whether you're improving it or not. So that's sort of pulling faith, following the rules, and I believe God follows his own rules. And in operations management, when you set up these operations, it's important to follow them. And then if something needs to be fixed, you fix it and you improve it, but you follow the process. So now we're going to talk about aggregate planning. So aggregate planning is sort of the intermediate range planning that covers the time horizon of 2 to 18 months. This is really useful for organizations that experience seasonal or other variations in demand. And really, the goal is to achieve a production plan that will effectively utilize the organization's resources to satisfy demand. So there's several pieces that go into aggregate planning. First is the corporate strategies and policies. Really the whole conditions around you, the economic, competitive, political conditions. And then the aggregate demand forecast. So we talked about forecasting before. This once again reemphasizes the importance of good forecasting. So all of these go into a business plan that establishes operation and capacity strategies. And then the aggregate plan establishes the operations capacity. And that flows into the master schedule, which establishes a schedule for specific products. So we're going to talk today about those two bottom boxes, aggregate plan and the master schedule. So here's some inputs. So there's resources. What are your workforce and production rates, your facilities and equipment, your demand forecast, your policies, your policies with workforce changes. Is your policy that you keep everybody on and you have them work overtime? Or is your policy that you lay off people and then rehire them? Is your policy that you find work when they're during the lull times? Or what is it? Your subcontracting policies, your overtime policies, inventory levels and changes, and back orders. So all of those are inputs. And then the cost. So you have the cost of carrying inventory, you have the cost of back orders, you have the cost of hiring and firing, cost of overtime, inventory changes, subcontracting. So all of those work together. So here's a cumulative graph. So that blue line is your cumulative demand. And you see that early on, the demand is lower than your output, but that's all in anticipation of that period 6, where where it just takes off. It actually takes off in period 5, but if you can see that whole thing, then that straight line, if you just produce on that straight line, you'll have some surplus that then you can use to cover that excess demand in period 5 and 6. So that's sort of a way of leveling your demand, and there's other ways of looking at it too, and we'll go through those. So time fences. So period 1, 2, and 3, this is where it's frozen. You know what you're doing and you have it planned and it's pretty much fixed. Then period 4 and 5 is somewhat firm. It's squishy. You have some good ideas, but there's still some flexibility there. And then that period 6 through 9, that's totally liquid, open, whatever happens. You're guesstimating, but you're also very flexible. So the master scheduling process starts with the beginning inventory, your forecast, your customer orders. That goes into your master scheduling, and then out of that comes the projected inventory, master production schedule, and uncommitted inventory. So the summary for this chapter, we talked about aggregate planning, the planning sequence, time fences, and master scheduling.